Hi everybody, Jeremy Siskind here, the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano, as well as the author of Solo Standards for Piano and the whole Jazz Piano Fundamentals series, the whole kit and caboodle. I released a video yesterday that had terrible audio problems. Somehow another video of mine was playing in the background, and so there were two of me phased in a weird way. So I'm remaking that video today, which is good because it means I've had rehearsal. I'm going to be able to nail it this time. I actually understand the material. I'm not going to mess up. We'll see about that. So the concept here is that Bud Powell voicings are these two-note simple voicings that we can use when we're playing solo piano. And as I've been thinking about these and explaining them, I've realized that a lot of the harmonic embellishments that we do that we might make in our voicings, we can do with just these two-note voicings, and it's actually a really good place to explore them because we get to get rid of all the noise of ninths and 13ths and fifths and whatever. So it's a good place to explore how to embellish harmony without the noise. So if you want a full recounting of Bud Powell voicings, I will link you to a video where you can do that. But the basic principle of a Bud Powell voicing is that we're thinking two-note voicing. And for the most part, it's going to be the root plus the third or the seventh. On sixth chords, sixth might replace the seventh. On sus chords, fourth can replace thirds. But in general, the voicing is going to consist of the root on the bottom, and then either the third or seventh above. So that if we are doing a voicing for C minor 7, we're probably going to do one of these two, either root and third or root and seventh. And if you'd like to learn more about spacing of, sometimes you can put the root up there, sometimes you could put the bass down there. Watch that first video. I don't want to get into that too deeply. All right, so what are some of these ways that we can embellish or manipulate these voicings that I'm referring to? So let's make a little list. So first of all, the tritone substitution. Right. If I have a G7, I could replace it with a D flat 7, for instance, or C sharp. And this is actually really useful a lot of places in these voicings because sometimes, your notes, your third or your seventh is a little bit high in the range, and then the bass gets high. And so sometimes that tritone substitution, like in this case right here, can let your bass get into a slightly more acceptable, richer range, by which I mean lower, than it would if it were all the way up here on the G. One of the things that I always preach about tritone substitution is that it's called a substitution, but very often it's actually a tritone addition, meaning that we'll play the normal chord and we'll play the tritone sub. So in a measure of G7, we won't just play D flat 7 instead, we'll play maybe a couple of beats of G7 and then a couple of beats of D flat 7. Second thing we can do is tonicization, meaning we're adding a dominant chord a fifth above our target. So if our target is C major, we're going to add a G7, the dominant chord, a fifth above the target. We can combine those two concepts, tonicization plus tritone. I'll try TT sub. And so now we're going from D flat 7 to C major 7. And you can shorten that thought process instead of saying, okay, a fifth above dominant chord and then the tritones above that. That tonicization plus tritone sub is always just going to be the dominant chord a half step above your target chord. So dominant a half step above. But the reason that it works is because it's the tonicization of the tritone sub, at least in my opinion. I think I've got two more. So we can do a sidestep, meaning that we are going to target a voicing or a chord by half step, moving each of the notes by half step. So for instance, B major 7 leading to C major 7. And that could be from a half step below or from a half step above as well. And here's the part that I'm really excited about, which is suspensions. And here it's going to be a little bit different depending on whether we're doing a root plus third voicing or a root plus seventh voicing. For root plus third, the suspension is going to be from the fourth to the third, what is so often called a 4-3 suspension. For a voicing with the root plus the seventh, it's going to be a major seventh to dominant seventh suspension. And now, of course, that doesn't work on major seventh chords. But on major seventh chords, if we want to make a little bit of motion on a C major 7, we can move the seventh from the sixth. Technically, that's kind of changing it from a major 7 to a major 6 chord. But those are just two colors of the same sonority. All right, so those are 5 different harmonic moves that we can do, even with just 2 notes. Tritone sub, tonicization, the dominant seventh a half step above. We're adding that in, adding in a sidestep, and adding suspensions. So now what I want to do is go over to what a difference a day makes. Hey, I already did this. But I'm going to do it again because I care. I'm going to go over to what a difference a day makes, and I want to show you how I might use some of these devices. So let's see. We're starting on F minor 7, and I'm going to start with the root and the third. But this is pretty boring, right? Because the root's already in the melody. Right, F is the root. So we only have a total of 2 different pitches here, F and A flat. So this is a nice time to add a chord here, especially for that reason. And I'm going to choose to add that dominant seventh a half step above. I'm going to use a B7 because it just frames the F so beautifully in between B and A. Let's continue to have fun. That's what we're here for. And let's do our major seventh to dominant seventh suspension to create a little bit of motion. Pretty nice. And now things are moving pretty fast, so I'm probably not going to do too much ornamenting. But it might be nice because there's a little bit of a, okay, so I went fast there, but all I did was I wrote root third for E flat 7. I wrote root 7th for A flat 7. I wrote root 7th for G minor 7th. Now, as I get to this C7, it's a little awkward. In the key signature, this is an E flat, so that's the sharp 9. But this whole voicing, it's just like, you know, without the 7th there to soften that dissonance, it's a little wacky. And so in order to soften that dissonance a little bit, I'm going to do this chord and then the tritone sub. And I think it just makes it a little bit more palatable for our ears. Then we've got... Here's a nice place to use a 4-3 suspension if we want to do that. So this is the 4th to the 3rd above the B flat. Let's see, I want to create a little more motion, I think, here. And part of the reason I'm choosing some places to create more motion is that a lot of times it's having a flat melody or a boring melody. I could do that. That's major 7th to minor 7th suspension. Let's go ahead and do that. I don't have a better idea at this moment. I have some different ideas, but nothing better. And now you might say, well, that's interesting. You didn't do the suspension. You didn't start with that suspension. You kind of added it in as an extra tension. And yeah, you could do it at the beginning of the bar. You could do it at the middle of the bar. This is part of what makes jazz fun. There's not just one way. So it's getting awfully low. So this is just a place in general. It doesn't really have anything to do with ornamenting that I want to jump up. So I've kind of got a bit of a built-in sort of a ornamentation or embellishment there. Let's do a sidestep into the D half diminished. So I've got D and C as my root and 7th. And I could do a sidestep either from above, in which case it really sounds like an E flat 7. Sounds good. We've kind of already used a similar device like that a bit, so I want to try a sidestep from below. Technically, I should probably write this as C sharp and B. And here's something that we didn't talk about that is just occurring to me, is that you could switch between the two Bud Powell voicings in the same measure. So we're gonna do that half step above. Entryway, target into the G7. I said that, but it's so boring because the melody is the root that really what I want to do here is add the tritone substitution. Because now I have a total of 3 notes rather than just one. Let's see, what do I want to do in this next measure? Let's do that major 7th to minor 7th suspension. And here, it's a tonic minor chord, so we could actually even take it one step further and end on C minor 6. And it's kind of fun. There's a lot of open space, so you could do like A natural, A flat, back to A. Might get a little bit too busy, but it's there for you. All right. As I get here, I'm probably just going to keep it somewhat standard. Root 7th, root 3rd, root 7th. And then I do want to do some kind of a sidestep into the F minor 7. So let's plan for like a G flat minor 7. And I could go F7, G flat minor 7, back to F minor 7, but it's kind of giving away that target. So I might just actually replace the F7 with the sidestep and just do G flat instead because it's so colorful here. let's do another side step going upwards into the B flat 7. Cool. So we've reached then the end of this first page. So let me play this for you. And yeah, so you could see that there's so much that we can do even with just these 2 notes. Always staying, I think always, with the root and 3rd or root and 7th. So. Here we go. That sounds really good. Let's do it one more time because it's so fun. All right, so I hope that was useful for you. If you like figuring those kind of chord substitutions out, you'll really like both Playing Solo Jazz Piano and Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2, which talks about a lot of things regarding like tonicization and tritone subs and the sorts of things we're talking about. And if you like playing great jazz arrangements, you'd love Solo Standards for Piano. All right, I hope this video works the second time. If you have successfully watched this video without any audio problems, say something about the second time. You know, love's better the second time around. The video's better the second time around. Have a good one, everyone.